All right, well, good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Good. Doing good? All right. So we're starting a new series called Getting Christmas Right, and I'm just going to go ahead and warn you. I hope you're ready to cry this morning because I think everybody was crying during the first service. So just a fair warning there. But I am a stickler at my house about Thanksgiving comes before Christmas. And so my wife calls me a Scrooge because I don't even let the decorations come out of the attic until after Thanksgiving Day. And so the idea of starting a Christmas series before Thanksgiving is kind of like when you pet a cat the wrong way for me. It's like, I don't really know about it. But as Doug and I have talked through this thing, I came to realize that if we're going to get Christmas right, we've got to start with Thanksgiving. That we can't recognize the importance of Christ without also having an attitude of gratitude, if you will. That to really understand Christmas, we have to be thankful not for the many gifts, but for the one gift that mattered when God gave His Son Jesus to die on the cross for us at Christmas. So that's where we're going to be, and I really believe that for every single person, there's lots of things to be thankful for, but as I said, the most important thing that we can all be thankful for is the fact that God is faithful, that He is who He says He is, and He will do what He says He will do. And I think that's where Doug's story is going to take us this morning. So without further ado, this is Doug Barnes, probably my best friend outside of people I work with in ministry circles. I realize that's weird because he's old and I'm not so old, right? But he still looks really good.
Don't I look younger than him?
Yeah, I don't know about that. But we'll get to that part of the story in just a minute. So, Doug, you want to take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, I'm Doug Barnes. I know some of you. I don't know all of you, and some of you have heard this story. So when we get to the end, a lot of you know what we went through already. But the reason that I'm here is nothing to do with me, nothing to do with Trey. This is what God has done in me, through me, and asked me to share with you. I kept having a dream, and I know this sounds strange, but I'm sure it's happened to other people, and I know there's people here that things are happening to like happened to me, and you don't even realize that it's happening, or you do realize, and you're like me, and you ignore it. But I kept having this dream that I was on this stage, and I didn't know why. And so I have a love of music, so a lot of this goes back to music in my life, but I knew I wasn't supposed to do Brandon's job, so that was an easy. So I thought I was supposed to lead worship or something. Then I realized I'm not that good of a singer.
Yeah, that's a problem usually with worship.
Yeah. So I knew that was out, and then it hit me. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do announcements. Dennis Parker was going to be gone. The announcements were mine. And then I realized, because I started going to his life group and we become really good friends, I couldn't kick him to the curb. So there had to be something else. And I realized that all the things that have happened in my life, I needed to tell and share with everybody else. And I shared that with Brandon one morning, and I told him, and he said, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And then the next day I found out I was doing this.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up here, and why I'm here is to tell my story and some things that have happened in my life to change me.
Yeah, I mean, so all this starts probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I think what we're going to see is that God has been faithful in your life in little things that now looking back you see were stepping stones, but in the moment you may not have even realized that was God doing something to prepare you and your family, and it started out with something as simple as a conversation over breakfast at Sunrise Grill right up here, right?
Yeah, yep. I had been to the Haiti meetings a couple times, talked with Brandy, and I felt like I was supposed to go to Haiti, but I never took the time, made the time. I just, I always had an excuse, and one of the excuses was work. I couldn't take off from work that long. I own my own business, and so I just couldn't do it. And then I put it off. And I know Brandy thinks it's because of the shots, because I didn't want to take the shots. And that was part of it, but that's not the whole truth. So anyhow, go to breakfast one Saturday morning, and Jim Honeycutt's there. And Jim and I are friends. And Jim and I start talking, and Jim says, so when are you going to Haiti with us? And I said, Jim, I don't really have time to do that. And as soon as those words come out of my mouth, I realized, I'm taking 3 weeks off for me to go do what I want to do. I went to Florida and Sturgis and all this stuff, and I took 3 weeks. In that 3 weeks, I think I worked 2 days. And I realized, if I can take 3 weeks off for me, I can take a week off for God to go do what He's telling me and calling me to do. So I ended up going to Haiti, and that was where Trey and I really
we kind of hit it off.
Created a friendship.
Which we laugh about because it's weird, because you actually have kids my age.
Maybe I was supposed to father you. Okay, anyhow.
Let's stick with friendship.
Okay. So anyhow, Trey and I become friends, and we've got this relationship and friendship and can share things. And so the fact that God sent me to Haiti and made me realize that through Jim led me to Trey, which led me into other things.
Which was both our first trip to Haiti.
Yeah. And led to other things. One of the things was Trey and I become friends, and all of a sudden I get a phone call.
Yeah, so most of you know every summer our youth group goes on a trip that is a combination of a summer camp and a mission trip together. And it's oftentimes very difficult to get volunteers, right? Adults are afraid of teenagers for whatever reason, right? Then you throw in the fact that they usually stink, right? And they never run out of energy. I don't know what it is about a teenager, but they put the Energizer Bunny to shame. They just go and go and go, and it's worse at camp because they're like away from home, and so curfew's midnight, so they're like, all right, well, midnight's not supposed to be in my room, but that means I've got till at least 3 a.m., right? And so by like day 2, the adults are all like, right? And so I needed a male chaperone. And I thought, man, there's no way. But what we were doing, I thought Doug would really be useful. So I picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, man, just a shot in the dark. So the pitch from his end, right? Why don't you take 5 days off of work? I will feed you cafeteria food. We're going to drive 7 hours, and I want you to hang out in a room with teenage guys, and we're going to do all this work. And then there's going to be worship involved. But the truth is, it's like the best week of your life. And so I asked Doug, and Doug's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll go. And so...
And I went. And honestly, it was one of the best weeks of my life. I enjoyed it. I bonded with teenagers. Because I'm a teenager at heart, and I look like a teenager, so I fit right in. But we went to this camp, and it was one of those things I didn't realize what it was doing to further me in my journey. But we went, and, these kids, we bonded, we had fun, and one night we was playing dodgeball. And
barefoot. You were barefoot.
Yeah, I was barefoot because I had on flip-flops, and you can't play dodgeball in flip-flops. Of course, it wouldn't have made much difference. But so we are on our way down there, and Eric Sasser and I decide we're going to take our stuff and take it back to the room before we go down to the gym. And while we're going, we go through the commons area because we're at a college. We go through this commons area, and there was another group there from another church. There were several churches there. And there was another group staying in the same dorm as we were. Well, their drill sergeant...
Yeah, they literally called him Staff Sergeant Tattoo. Yeah, that's what our kids called him.
Youth leader, but he was like a staff sergeant. These kids were all in the commons area. Well, we walked through there, and Eric and I was taking our stuff, and these kids say, "Are y'all playing dodgeball? Is y'all's group playing dodgeball?" And I said, "Yeah, we're playing dodgeball." And the one kid looks at me, and he says, "Well, try this on." And I'm like, "No, he didn't." He did. So we go put our stuff down, and by this time, I've got all this energy in me, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, they're going down. So I go back to the gym, and I gather these kids, and we have a little pep talk. And
Spiritual
I told them
meeting, would you call it?
Yes, exactly. And I told these kids, I said, we will not lose to this group. It's not going to happen. I hope out of all these groups, we play them. Lo and behold, first group that we play in dodgeball is that group. We mutilated them. They looked like kindergartners up against seniors in high school. It was bad. Well, we beat them. Then we played a couple more games, and we got put out. No big deal, because we did what we came to do. We beat that group. So that evening, when it was all said and done, I limped back to the room, and we go through this commons area, and we're all walking together, and we're walking in, and when we walk in, that same group of kids is sitting in there now. Can you imagine the humiliation that they felt seeing us walk through there knowing that we just slaughtered them? So I thought, I'm going to be the bigger person. I ain't going to say nothing. I'm just going to walk on through here. And we were walking. I was thinking, I ain't going to say nothing. Then all of a sudden it came out. I don't know where it came from. But I turned around because I had already walked past him. I turned around and was backing away from him. I said, how does this fit? And I did this. And as I was doing this, there's an ottoman behind me that I stumble over and fall.
Oh, like, I'm talking full wipeout.
Yeah, I don't mean I stumbled and caught myself. I mean, I hit the floor.
It was humbling for Doug and hilarious for all of us. Yeah, that's what it was.
But the next year we go again, and Eric and I, we're talking, and Eric and I shared a room that year, I do believe.
I have not. I'm not sure.
I think Eric and I don't know, but anyhow, Eric and I was together a lot that trip, and we got to talking, and I had formed this bond with these kids, and we had a really good relationship, and I became friends with all of them. So Eric and I are walking back to the room, and we're just having a normal conversation, and then Eric breaks into this serious conversation. He said, Doug, you do realize that all these kids really look up to you, and you make an impression on them, and they like you. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I can kind of sense that. And he said, how do you think it's going to make them feel when they find out that you're living with Colette and y'all aren't married? And it hit me. I'm not going to say I was a bad parent or bad father, because I wasn't. My kids turned out pretty good. But I realized then I did not set the best example for my children, and I wasn't setting a very good example for y'all's kids. So came home, realized Colette and I had already talked about getting married a couple times, and I bought a ring. I gave it to her for her birthday, and we decided that we was going to get married, and she had to have me real quick. So, I mean, that was in November, and by February we were getting married, and I mean, she needed it bad.
Yeah, you're much better off for that marriage, just saying.
So,
yeah.
But me going on that trip, because of Trey, led me to Eric, and then, everything kept progressing, and it changed my life. Well, and then, it was the week before Kids Jam, and we were helping with Kids Jam.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Doug went to student camp, had several days off, and then started Kids Jam on Sunday. So he was like glutton for punishment.
But it was God putting this stuff out there and me not telling him no. So I helped with Kids Jam, which is a lot of fun because we sing and we dance, and I'm an avid dancer. Anybody that's been around me, you see me dance all the time.
I don't think so.
Well, it was a good thought.
Yeah.
So we do this Kids Jam thing, and it's all these little things that happen. And Colette and I we were working together, and we had this little girl, and a lot of you probably know her, Lexi Almond. And at the end of that week, her mom gave us a little card to thank us for being there for those kids that week. And I'm sure, I don't know if Katie's here, she has no idea that little card itself changed me, because it showed appreciation, and it made me think you need to do that for other people too. And Colette and I still have that card. It's in my nightstand, just a thank you. Little things like that make a difference. But through Kids Jam, became friends with Eric and Elizabeth McManus.
Yep.
Very good friends. We hang out with them. We hang out with them. We hang out with Dennis and Trish. We started going to Dennis and Trish's life group because of Eric and Elizabeth. Became friends with Trish and Elizabeth. I mean, we have so many friends in that life group. I wish I could mention them all, because there are a ton of people in that group that I consider my friends now.
Yeah, y'all got like a small house church going on.
We do, and it's actually pretty cool. And if y'all aren't going to a life group, you need to find one and get in it, because that is the biggest benefit that this church puts out there, is the life group. Preaching's great, the music's great, the life group, you're actually, close to these people. You use them. You call on them. It's a great thing. If you don't have one, find one. If you can't find one, just come to ours. We'll welcome more people in our life group. We have the best one out there. So, I mean, if you're looking for a good one, it is ours.
Yeah, I mean, Friday night we got together to finalize this, and you were like, you have to be here early because I have life group at 7.
He wanted to come
and I'm not
late
canceling.
for dinner. And I said, Trey, tonight's life group. He said, well, call Dennis and tell him that you're not going to make it. I said, no, you just got to come early because I'm not missing life group. Yeah. So very important, very, very big thing in my life, because somebody like me that has done things that they're not proud of, you got to stay grounded. Life group keeps me grounded because the things I do in my life, sometimes we do them with life group, Sometimes you don't, but you stay grounded because you're surrounding yourself with those people.
Yeah.
Very important. Very important. So.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that all makes me think of what Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5:24. Basically, he who calls you is faithful, and he will surely do it. Just this idea that God is looking into your life and seeing, like, things that he's calling you to, and he is faithful to, even in the small things that we wouldn't even necessarily notice, to make such a big impact that ultimately may be preparing us, as we'll find out in your story later, for something that we never anticipated would happen or come along. And so, you know, we talked about a little bit of life groups and that kind of thing. And for you and I think our time that we get to spend a lot together is in Haiti. Because, I mean, we're together 24 hours, however many days we're there. And if you've never been to Haiti with us, just another plug, you should definitely come with us. Yeah. It's a life-changing trip. But part of that is, or was, we were with on the ground, specifically Tim Parker for you, who, if you've been coming to church for a while, Tim is the gentleman who had a heart attack in February and passed away. But Tim and you really connected, and it really showed you some things.
Yeah, Tim was a great guy. I mean, he was a super great guy. He was a lot like me. We had a lot in common. But now he was the big, looked like a truck driver, burly bike rider, big long beard. I mean, I don't look like that, but I mean, we had a lot in common because of the truck driving, because of motorcycling. We had the same motorcycle. There was just a lot of things that we had in common, and we clicked, and we had this connection. And we would, even when we weren't in Haiti, I communicated with Tim. I mean, it was nothing for Tim and I to talk several times a week sometimes, or we might go for a couple weeks and not talk, but we always talked. So we had this relationship. I mean, I actually talked to him 2 days before he passed away. And because the trip we were there, he scared me to death. I thought he was going to die while we were there, and he was already having these chest pains, and I kept telling him, you're not helping us. We've got a group of guys here. We can do this. We don't need your help. You're not helping us because you can't. Something's going to happen just because of something that happened while we were there. And but anyhow, Tim was just that kind of guy. He had that kind of effect on me that we become that close friends. Well, one morning on a trip while we were there, we're working on the guest house, and I got up that morning. I went up on the balcony because up on the balcony you can look over and see Port-au-Prince. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous up on top of the mountain. And Tim comes up there, and he said, I'm glad you're up here. I want to talk to you. And okay. I thought we was going to talk about what we were going to do, what the plans were on the building, whatever. And we sat down on the corner of the balcony, and he starts talking to me and starts crying. And I'm like, oh, Lord. So he starts telling me that he don't know, he's not been the best father, he's not been the best husband, all these different things that he saw wrong in himself. And he said, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is. And it's killing me that God's blessed me like he has, and I don't know why. And he opened the door for me to tell him because of people like me. Because I needed to see somebody that was a lot like me that had issues that I didn't have, but I had issues that he didn't have. But we had so much in common and developed this bond that we could talk about anything. And he's telling me all this stuff, and I told him, I explained to him that morning that the reason he was there was for me and people just like me, because I needed to see what God was doing in him to change me. So knowing Tim changed me. Yeah. And he needed to know that. That's why anybody that changes you in a way like this, you need to let them know that they've had an impact on your life.
Yeah, the idea that God is faithful to work in you and to work through you, regardless of who you have been. Yeah. Like that is Tim Parker's story for sure, if you ever get to hear any of that. So let's fast forward, because I want to give adequate time to the end of your story. So this morning, the worship team, I requested that they play the last 2 songs that they played, Do It Again and Break Every Chain. And that's because those songs are really important to sort of the last, I don't know what, we'll call it 10 months or so of your family story. So why don't you start there and kind of just share with us a little bit.
All right. So my daughter becomes pregnant, and she tells me she's pregnant, and she has this pregnancy, and all's well. And she has the perfect pregnancy. Everything's going great. Let me back up a step because of the music thing. Mm-hmm. My daughter kind of stepped in beside me in this company and helps run it. And to be honest with you, she actually runs more of it now than I do. I don't have an office. She took my office. I work out of a box or out of a truck. So we kind of work together. So she sees everything that goes on. She sees financials. She sees drivers. She sees anything that comes in that has anything to do with the company. And so anybody that owns a company knows that it's not always, great. You have issues. You have things. Stuff comes up. Well, now Kenzie sees all this stuff. Well, we talk about this stuff, and she'll come to me and she'll say, I don't know what we're going to do. Don't know how we're going to do this. Don't know how we're going to pay this. Whatever it is, she always would come to me, and I'd tell her, Kenzie, it's going to be okay. God's got me this far. He ain't going to stop now. I don't know why. It's not that I deserved it. It's because God is there. And so anytime something would happen, we would end up going to lunch, going to pick up a part, going to get the mail, something. We'd end up in a car together. And every time we'd have one of those trying days, that song that they sang, Elevation Worship, Do It Again, would come on the radio. Every time. It was almost scary. Didn't realize it, why it was happening, but it was happening. And I would ask her, you hear this? You hear this? God's got this. He's faithful. He's going to move mountains. He's going to do it again. And it was eerie that it happened as much as it did. Yeah. Well, that song meant a lot to Kenzie and I because it played all the time. Well, then fast forward to her pregnancy. She had the perfect pregnancy. I mean, everything was great. She was doing good. The baby was doing good. The doctors didn't believe me when I told them that she was gaining too much weight. But anyhow, so everything's perfect. On a Tuesday, Kenzie starts having contractions, and they're, pretty good ways apart. And so Wednesday evening, they're getting a little bit closer. She decides she's going to go to the hospital. So she goes to the hospital, and they tell her, they say, yeah, you're going into labor. But there's no need to have everybody come tonight because you're going to be tomorrow before this baby comes. So she tells everybody, so get up Thursday morning and go to the hospital, get there, and then everybody starts coming. And then we've got this whole crowd of people there because we've got a good-sized family, and there's a whole crowd of people there. And we're all up in her room, and they tell us about lunchtime they was going to check her dilation. They was going to do some stuff, whatever. So just like always, whenever I hang up the phone, whenever we part ways, no matter what it is, the last thing I say to my daughter when I leave is, I love you. And I'm so glad I did because that morning changed my life. We get down to the room. We think we're going out for a few minutes so they can check her, and we get a text, and I'm pretty sure Mason's the one that sent it, that they were ready for her to start pushing. So we weren't going back to the room, so that I wasn't going to get to see her anymore before this baby got here. So we're all down in the room. We're partying. We're getting ready to have a new grandbaby.
This your first granddaughter?
Well, just my first granddaughter.
Yeah.
Very excited. Very excited. And we're all down there in the waiting room, and we're waiting. And we're waiting, and we're waiting some more, and hours are going by, and no baby. Well, come to find out, she's been in there pushing for over 3 hours. They've tried suction. They've had, I don't know how many different positions her pushing in, trying to get Amelia to come out. She wasn't coming out. So then they come down, they send a nurse down, and she comes down and tells us, she's not able to give birth. They're going to have to do a C-section. Well, okay, I hate it. It's not what we expected, but they do it every day. They do several of these every day. It's nothing new. It's just how it is. And so we're sitting there and we're thinking that, okay, everything's going to be fine because C-sections, I have found out since then, but typical C-section, once they're that far and they're ready, they go in usually 2 minutes, that baby's out. It's an hour. We're hearing nothing. We're all wondering what in the world's going on. We're just sitting there in the waiting room. We're all sitting there. Never in a million years did it ever cross my mind that something could be wrong. I don't know why. Because after this much time, you would assume that you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? It never crossed my mind. She had the perfect pregnancy. And all I could think was, we're fine. We're going to have a baby here in a little bit. I'm going to have my granddaughter. I'm going to get to hold her, get to love on her, all this stuff. That's just where your mind is. And then a nurse shows up and asks for Kenzie's parents and asks you to follow her. And she takes you into a little room where there's nobody at but the three of you. And she tells you there's complications. And your heart sinks. You don't know what's going on. You're at a loss. They tell you that, first thing I want to tell you is they're both okay. But there's been some complications. And they told us about the delivery and that everything that went on. And so find out later that Mason's been there the whole time that she's in there getting a C-section. Well, where Kenzie pushed so long and they tried to suction her out and all this stuff's going on, Amelia's stuck. She's not coming out. Mason's in there watching this. They got Amelia as tight as they can get her, and they are trying to pull her out of Mackenzie, and they're lifting Kenzie that far off the table by pulling on Amelia, and she won't come out. She didn't breathe for 2 minutes. She went without oxygen. Her heart rate dropped. It was awful. They finally get her out. Mason said she had no color to her. She was completely black where she'd been without oxygen. She's not crying. They said it was like a scene from Grey's Anatomy or one of these hospital shows where you hear all these doctors and nurses, and they said there was no less than 30 people in there working on Kenzie and working on that baby, and that baby's not crying, not making a sound. This is Kenzie's first baby. Kenzie's my only daughter. She's the youngest. Kenzie and I have a great relationship. We're very close. I'm torn out of the frame because I want to talk to Kenzie. I want to make sure she's okay. I need to know if Amelia's okay. And we're getting nothing except for what we're hearing from the nurse. Well, after they told us, Mason's parents come in and we shared it with Mason's parents, and it was just as devastating for them as it was for us. And after we talked to them, we brought everybody else in. And when everybody else came in, we told everybody what was going on. And by this time, she's in NICU. They've got a breathing tube, a feeding tube, all kinds of
Yeah, we've actually got
wires.
pictures. Anita, if you don't mind throwing those up here for us.
They've got wires hooked to this little girl everywhere, and it's awful. It's terrifying. I find out that Mackenzie is okay. Amelia's alive. She's having seizures, and they can't get them to stop. The first 24 hours she was alive, she had 41 seizures. They couldn't get them to stop. They were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen. Nobody was allowed to hold her or touch her. They did let Kenzie touch her because they wanted Amelia to know that her mom was around. So they would let Kenzie, she was in a wheelchair, they'd wheel her over there in the NICU and let Kenzie lay her hand on Amelia's leg just to let her know that her mom was there because she could tell it was her mom. Nobody else was allowed to touch her. So all this is going on, and it's killing all of us. And so we're all praying. Everybody's together, and I told everybody, so we need to pray, we need to pray, we need to pray, we need to pray. All this time, I knew in my heart I was supposed to put everybody together to pray. And I couldn't do it, and I don't know why. Because when we go out to eat, when we have something going on at the house, at work, wherever, I'm usually the one that prays. Don't have a problem praying. Don't have a problem praying in public. Not going to say I'm the best prayer giver in the world, but I'm not afraid to do it. But I could not do it that day, and I don't know why. I needed to bring everybody together to do the prayer. Couldn't do it. So we walk outside of this room, and we all go outside to get some fresh air. And when you walk out the door at the hospital, there's a road because it's a little drive-through to drop people off and pick people up with a roof over it, and then on the other end of it, there's some poles. Well, for the very first time, I walked away from everybody. I walked over where those poles were. Every time I've ever prayed, I bowed my head, I closed my eyes, and I pray to God, and I just think that's how it's supposed to go. Not that day. I don't know why, but I walked over there. I looked up at the sky, and I prayed out loud. I just stood there and talked to God and told him, I can't do this. I can't take this. I need you now. I need you here now because I can't do this. And it was tough because I knew I was supposed to be leading this, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I'm there, and I'm praying, and I stood there, and I called Dennis Parker. And he notified the church and everybody, and they sent out the urgent prayer request. I called my best friend Archie, and I told him I needed him to pray because those are two people that I knew in my life that I could call, and they would drop whatever they were doing right then and pray hard. And they would continue to pray until everything was okay. You need those people in your life, and that's part of a life group. So all this is going on, and then friend Matt Sullivan came over there where I was standing, put his arm around me, and he said, you know it's going to be okay. I said, I know, Matt. I said, there's only one person that can fix this, and that's God. And we need to pray. And all I kept thinking was, put these people in a circle and pray. We walked back over there amongst everybody. I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I just couldn't do it. About that time, this young girl, she may have been 25 at most, walks out of the hospital. She had on this visitor sticker just like the rest of us. Had her name on it, couldn't tell you what it was, didn't read it, didn't matter, didn't care. That was the last thing on my mind at the time. But she walks up to us, and she said, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happened. I don't want in your business. I'm not trying to get in your business. I'm supposed to pray with y'all. Broke my heart, but I needed that. She come out, she put us in a circle, and she prayed for us, for the family, and for that baby. She didn't know any of us, but she did it. When she was done praying, she walked away. Don't know if she went to the parking lot, don't know if she went back inside. I asked everybody, does anybody know who that was? Does anybody know where she went? Not a soul. Nobody knew. But I know that God sent her out there to do what I couldn't do. There's an angel there to send her out there to pray for us. We needed that right then more than anything in this world because I couldn't do it. So that was day one. The next morning, I got up to go to the hospital, and driving up there, just a little side note, my pickup was in the shop. They'd give me a loaner vehicle, and they'd give me an expedition. So I drive it to the hospital. About halfway to the hospital, that song come on the radio. Trying not to get choked up like I did the first service, but halfway there, that song comes on the radio that I needed to hear. And I know God's talking to me through music. And that song played, and I just prayed. I just prayed right there, and I told God, I know you got this. I know you've got this because you've done this so many times in my life. And so many times with Kenzie, this song come out. And then for me to hear that on the way to the hospital, I knew that was God, making sure that I knew he was there. So I get to the hospital, and we go in and talk to Kenzie, and everything is going okay, and no change. She's still having seizures. They told Kenzie that they was going to release her to go home on Sunday. And then they told us to prepare for Amelia to be in NICU for 2 weeks. That's hard. I know other people have done it, but you don't know what that's like until it happens to you, to know that you're coming home and you're leaving that baby there, and you don't know what's going to happen because they don't know what's going to happen. So we're all there, and that evening they were, I guess, coming in to check on Kenzie or something. I don't remember what it was, but we decided that myself and Colette, my two oldest boys, Tristan and Caleb, and Mason's aunt and grandma, we were all going to go get something to eat. Well, on the way out, I told them, I said, we can all ride in that expedition. I've got the expedition, we'll just drive it because we can all ride together. So we go down, we get in the expedition. I start it. put it in reverse, get halfway out of the parking spot. Elevation Worship, Do It Again, comes on the radio. And when it came on, it floored me. And I told everybody, I stopped, and I told everybody, I said, you need to stop and listen to this song. You need to listen to every word, and I'll explain why afterwards. They listened to the song, and then when we got where we was going to eat, I sat there in the parking lot, and I told them about that song. And I told them that's how I know and why I keep saying God's got this. Because I have faith, and I know God has got this. Because he's telling me this and making sure that he knows that I know through that song. Do it again. He's going to move mountains, miracles. You hear all these miracles in the Bible. You see these movies where they're talking about all these miracles. You don't really grasp it until it happens in front of you. That little girl is a miracle. And I know that God was there because of that song. So we go back, we eat, we go back to the hospital, and I tell Kinsey what's going on because she knows this song also. And I told her what happened that morning on the way to the hospital. And I told her that it played again when we was going to eat. And I got to witness to those people in that car about my faith, just like I'm witnessing to you now about my faith and my trust. Because that's a tough thing to do, is to trust and have that kind of faith when you're in dire need like this. So that's Friday. Friday night at 7 o'clock, they told us that they had got something they thought was going to help these seizures. They found another medication that they was going to give her. They give it to her. She had a seizure at 7 o'clock. Now, keep in mind, she was having a seizure over 50% of the time before this. At 7 o'clock, she had a seizure, and then she didn't have another one until 2 a.m. So they had got the seizures under control. Still, they didn't know what was going to happen. They had prepared us. They told us there's probably going to be brain damage. There was a lot of trauma on Amelia, on her little body, on her head from the birth. They didn't know what was gonna come of it. Everybody was worried. They were trying to prepare us for the worst, and I realized that. But that's the hardest thing to hear. So we're trying to prepare ourselves, and then on Saturday, she wasn't having seizures anymore. They unhooked all the wires. They took out the tubes. She turned into a normal, healthy baby. And everybody was in awe, and they didn't know why. But I knew why, and I was sure to tell everybody why. Because I knew. Saturday was a pretty good day. She did good. They were supposed to release Kinsey on Sunday. Well, Sunday morning, just like normal Sunday morning, Colette and I get up to come to church. We're coming to church. Of course, we're praying for Amelia. Everybody's praying because, everybody knows what's going on. We come into church that morning, and song plays, and then Brandon, I don't remember. Brandon did the announcements. Somebody did announcements, and Brandon preached that day. But after the announcements were done, we're standing right there. Elevation Worship, Do It Again, is what they sang. I had chills. The hair on my arm stood up. I couldn't hardly stand still, and I told Colette, I said, "Son, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy that song's playing again this morning." And then they followed it right up behind it with "There's Power in the Name of Jesus." And I knew, and I was about to come out of my skin. And it was all I could do to stand there and then sit there and listen to the message and not get up and tell everybody what just happened. And but I didn't want to take Brandon's thunder. So, but all these things that happened, I was prepared for and shown that I need to be trusting all up to this point to prepare me for this. Sunday night, instead of them sending Kinsey home, they gave her and Mason a room in the NICU. So they had a little room in the NICU with a bed and TV and the whole deal. Amelia spent the night with them. They didn't say she had to stay with the nurses anymore because they had a 24-hour nurse sitting beside Amelia's bed in the hospital. She was not allowed to be by herself. Somebody had to be there. They had cameras on her because when we would go to see her, we were not allowed to stand in front of the camera. We had to stand on this side or all the way on this side. And they didn't like it when we stood on the other side because they could see us in the camera. But they had cameras on her 24 hours and a nurse sitting right beside of her. And this is how we were told to expect the next couple weeks to be. Well, then Sunday night, they put Amelia in the room with Kenzie and Mason. Monday, they sent them all home. And she's living proof.
I was going to say, they're sitting in the third row. We were going to bring them up, but she's sleeping, so
she's an absolute miracle. I know that God was there. I say all this to say, I know that God's been there for me, that He's faithful. Because there's so many times that I have left, strayed, whatever it is, but He's always brought me back. He's always waited on me. He's always there for me. He showed me that little girl. That little girl's a miracle. So,
yeah, it's amazing how 4 years ago that just a small conversation at Sunrise can prepare, and that God is working to grow a faith inside of you that prepares you for just such a time as what you call one of the biggest storms in your family's life. And I mean, at some point in your life, I'm sure you and I will get to sit down and have another conversation about, you remember that time with Amelia and how that prepared me for this? And it just reminds me of Philippians 1:6. It says, I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. When I was ordained, Eric and Anita got me a gift, and it hangs in my office, and it's a picture of a tree growing out of a rock, and it says there's two ways to live life. One is as if everything is a miracle, and the other is as if nothing is. Folks, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that God is faithful. I believe that He is always working, even when we aren't faithful, and that He's always leading and guiding, and He will do so regardless of the cost to Him, even unto sacrificing His own Son to pay a debt that He did not owe. So if we want to get Christmas right, we need to recognize the faithfulness of God, because the only gift worth truly celebrating is the gift of Jesus Christ, the gift of salvation. And so to get Christmas right, my prayer is that you will start today and you will recognize that the reason that we all have to be thankful is because God is faithful, even when we aren't. Let's pray. Dear Father God, I thank you for an opportunity to spend some time and to share an experience where you have shown that you are who you say you are, and you will do what you say you will do. God, so often we think of lyrics as just songs and as, unfortunately, as scripture as just words, but they remind us that you will do it again, that you are always faithful. God, I pray that each of us this week would slow down, that we would recognize the small things in our life that is you working. And most of all, God, I thank you for the fact that you are faithful even when I'm not. You know me pray. Amen. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your afternoon and have a good Thanksgiving.